Welcome to Agility Lab. My name is Morten Elvang, and in Agility Lab we have been running a campaign taking a spot check on agility in Denmark. So not only about Denmark, but taking a tour around about people who have influenced the agile environment in Denmark since its beginning. And Jesper, you are one of those. So it's a real pleasure that you offered to be here this afternoon and share your view on the state of agile, which we look forward to hearing. And it will be about 30 minutes. We are flexible on time, but around 30 minutes for you, and then we have time to discuss about it afterwards. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Perfect. So welcome.
Thank you, Morten. See if I can get sharing to work again. Is it working?
It is.
Cool. So thank you so much for inviting me, Morten. And as Morten said, I'll try to present my view on the state of Agile. It's my personal opinion, obviously supported with some facts from the outside. But I think as many people as you will ask on this particular subject, you'll probably get a different version of how this is playing out around the world right now. As I hope you've seen in both Morten's post and my own, if I can get this to change, if you're looking for an agile sales pitch, this might not be the right session to be in. I'll not try to do any kind of agile bashing, but just more talk about where is it right now? What am I seeing? How is this looking from a competitive edge perspective? Are we moving more towards a agile as more of a hygienic factor rather than a competitive edge? Where have we seen agile succeed? Where have we seen it not succeed? And what do I personally think are maybe more important points to pay attention to right now than what we have typically named agile during the last, let's say, 20 years? One major fact adding to the existing agenda. So to a large extent, this could have been the same presentation as I would have done maybe 1 or 2 years ago. But right now we're seeing something else. I don't think it's so much changing as it's accelerating these particular trends in a way we at least, or I haven't observed before. And to some extent, I think it just makes the original points that I probably would have presented in much the same way 2 years ago much, 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 much more important because what we're seeing right now is obviously, and you've probably heard this 1,000 times already, the impact of AI making its way into not only software development, but all types of product development. And not only product development, but all types of service development. And not only all types of service development, but all types of operations and day-to-day working companies. And to a large extent, it's not even the development part that is right now being impacted to the largest degree, because there are much more obvious places where you would see the impact of AI and a much more straightforward way of impacting. And that's typically anything from marketing to sales to operations, etc. So not only are we seeing this accelerating, we're also seeing this from a few different angles. We're seeing it in terms of the actual products being launched, and not only the speed of those launches, but also the products in and of themselves. So we're simply seeing solutions now that we would never have been able to imagine in the market just 1 or 2 years ago. If you're paying attention to the venture capitalist market, you'll also see that there is right now close to 0% investment in non-AI driven companies. So right now, if you're looking for venture capital to expand your product or your product launches, then if AI is not an absolutely essential part of that product, you're very, very likely to face a brick wall when trying to get funding. So to a large extent, it's about the products we're actually launching, not the way we're launching them, but the products themselves. But it's also obviously about the internal processes and how we go about developing those products. And finally, like I don't know how often I have heard this saying that if you're not going agile, or if you're not using lean, or if you're not doing things in some kind of modern way, you're going to be disrupted. And to be perfectly honest with you, that's been the saying for the past 20 years. And we've never ever seen that play out in real life to any large extent. So up till a few years ago, 2 years ago, you would still have seen the same companies developing software products in almost the same way as they would have done 20 years ago. Same markets, same type of customers, and still surviving and making quite a lot of money still, and not being not being disrupted in the way that any coach or consultant out there would have been telling them they would have been years ago. So there's something changing now. And I know I'm almost embarrassed to show this particular slide because you might have seen it in 9 out of 10 presentations done recently. But it's still interesting. The fact that it took Netflix almost 10 years to get 100 million users, and it took ChatGPT 2 months. So it's just telling us something about the pace of innovation going on. And I know it's kind of an apple and banana comparison because not all of those are paid users in the ChatGPT setting, but it's still a 10-year to 2 months time difference. So it's still, I think it's still worth paying attention to. But that begs the real fundamental question. And I'm sure some of you have been asking this or have been asked this particular. If the true situation is that now organizations, to a much, much larger degree than we've seen at any time in history before, are now being forced to sense, decide, ship, and validate much, 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 much faster if they want to stay competitive. How could it possibly be that Agile is not the solution to that particular problem? Like, it seems almost counterintuitive with all the things we've been preaching for the past 10 or 20 years. How could Agile not be the answer? And if we look at the situation from kind of a different perspective, we might start to find some of the reasons behind what I at least would suggest is the reason behind. So first of all, we're seeing a lot of different flavors of Agile out there, and we're seeing incredibly high levels of adoption. So somewhere between 60 and 80% are using some flavor of Agile in their companies. But we're also seeing almost 80% seriously now scrutinizing whether that investment is worth the effort. So that starts to beg the question whether we're just heading for this as a baseline, whether we're heading for this as a baseline that is now being scrutinized in terms of ROI, or we're heading for something different. My observation right now, and it's my personal observation, I'm not bringing any data to support that, is that right now we're seeing a lot of different versions of Agile out there. We're seeing Agile interpreted basically as mini waterfalls, maybe running in some Scrum-like sprints. It's basically fixed scope. It could be wrapped in a larger stage gate model. We're seeing highly framework or methodology-driven implementations, focusing on Scrum, Kanban, or any kind of scaled variant as the end goal in and of itself. So there might be teams being flexible, but the overall assumption is you need to do more in this particular direction if you want to do better. We're also seeing lots of companies out there loving particular tools or particular artifacts, like they might be big fans of backlogs or stories or Jira implementations, but it's not wrapped in any larger sense of framework. It's more of a local implementation of particular roles or tools. And then we're seeing the typical pick and choose, not so much from an artifact perspective, but more in terms of maybe some event-driven or role-based implementations where they might pick up on the specific role of a Scrum Master or a product owner. It's actually fun to see how many are using the term Scrum Master, where it's got very little to do with Scrum, which begs the question, what is a Scrum Master then there to do? If it's not Scrum, it must be something different. We also see companies out there working with Agile in the sense of being more maybe like an abstract mindset. So it's maybe so vague that you're not even supposed to get a hand of it in terms of describing what it is, but it's more of a feeling of being iterative and driven by collaboration and learning. And then we're definitely also seeing pockets, what I usually call pockets of true enterprise agility, where it's embedded in anything from your strategy to how you fund and how you organize your teams and how you run your company. To my knowledge, those are very, very far and few. So we're not seeing that at any scale that you would be able to celebrate this as being kind of the direction Agile is heading. So in my opinion, we're in a space where this is both a commodity, it's both a competitive edge, and it's definitely also what we traditionally call Agile theater. Doesn't mean that Agile can't help. So if you find yourself in an outdated waterfall world and you just need some faster feedback and maybe some incremental delivery, definitely. If it's total chaos, then you might pick and choose among the scale frameworks if you're really big, or Scrum or any other methodology if you're smaller. And if you find yourself just being in chaos where you can't coordinate the work going on between your many silos or your many dependent teams, then this could definitely also provide you with some transparency and visibility into those needs. But it does, however, turn us to a much more important question, which is what does this then do to the conversation we're having? And the way I'm framing it is that there used to be a question saying, "Are we agile?" And right now, I'm not really that interested in that particular answer, because first of all, in many cases, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to be like whether it's a yes or a no. It means so many different things. And even in the cases where the answer is a definite yes, it's probably a version of Agile that I would consider now more of a commodity or a hygienic factor than a true competitive edge. The much bigger question is, can we truly sense, decide, ship, and validate faster than the market around us? And I don't think at the place where we are right now that your typical version of Agile is going to help you a whole lot in terms of answering that particular question. So just to get a bit of conversation going, or maybe not so much conversation, but at least a bit of interaction. If I could just ask you to, in your chat, just quickly write one of these letters. So A, if your organization is mainly driven by Agile as mindset and principles. B, if it's a specific framework. C, if it's specific roles, events, or artifacts. D, if it's true business agility. Or E, if it depends on the specific team, area, or unit. And I can't see the chat myself, so I'll have to. There it is. Yeah, as expected, very much all over the place, with a few. I think E's might be our top scorer right now. So again, supporting the assumption that Agile is not one thing right now. It's a lot of different things, and we might need to pay attention to other factors if we need to have a really valid discussion about staying competitive. Before we do that, I'd like to just point out that given my introduction on AI, now we're seeing some of the problems we already had before AI entered with some of these ways of approaching modern development being now accelerated a lot. So I don't know if you heard the word, the framing crab in, crab out. Now we suddenly have crab in, landfill out. So we can produce a lot. And I don't know if if some of you have been sitting there trying to experiment with how quickly you can create your favorite app or your favorite whatever module or whatever of solving some particular problem. But you can do it, and you can write a lot of code, except it's not you writing it, it's an agent, and it is a lot faster than any human being out there. So you can really produce a lot of crap if you don't pay attention. Could do that before, now you can just do it much faster. If you're facing local optimization traps like high degrees of team interdependencies, fragile or slow CI/CD pipelines, Now you can absolutely overwhelm those dependencies with, again, lots and lots and lots of stuff. I even saw a statistic the other day saying the average team right now is slower because of AI developing software, simply because they haven't tackled the bottleneck around code review. And since you can now produce a lot more, a lot quicker, and that is for the simple fact that to solve the same problem, AI will typically write more code. You trust that particular code less than you did before. And that means the bottleneck of your code review is suddenly becoming so slow that the average team is actually getting slower from A to B in terms of getting things into production that had they not had the help of AI. And then the last factor, we all know that the average organization suffer from security, architecture, compliance problems. If those problems are there right now, they will again become a lot bigger when you introduce AI into the equation. Because not only is AI fast, it's typically also ungoverned, and you can access a lot of data that you might not have been purposely wanting to send out into your whatever chat robot or data analysis or whatever your service. So my personal opinion is that we need to start focusing on different stuff if we truly want to have a conversation about staying competitive. It's about the underlying operating model. It's about engineering practices. It's the way we structure. It's the way we work with AI, and it's the way we lead. And except for the AI, those would have been the same 4 topics I would have presented to you 2 years ago had I to do the same presentation here. To some extent, it's very disappointing. I've been in this game for the last 20 years consulting. Had you told me in 26 that we still would have been dealing now with an incredible focus on output, with very few teams being truly responsible for financial outcomes, with funding models being largely based on funding whatever output epics or features or whatever you're working with, I would not have believed you. I would have said, yes, that is where we are right now. It's in 26. Agile is new. We're going to revolutionize the world, and I'll show you in 5 or 10 years how many companies are still working in this old-fashioned way. But my observation is for the large part of all companies out there, this is still the way the world works. It's basically output driven. You might iterate within that output on outcome, but it's not the case that you're responsible for whatever, minimizing the amount of support or increasing the quality of the end solution or getting less churn on your customer base or whatever outcome metrics you could put on. You're essentially responsible for output. And then within that, you can work to get the most outcome out of it. The teams are not responsible, it's prioritized somewhere else. And funding is largely based on the same old model we saw 20 years ago. Could be that you have different experiences, but this is what I'm seeing still. It's also equally disappointing to see we've made great advances in engineering excellence, but we still have lots of teams out there manually moving their code through a deployment pipeline, not paying attention to basic fundamental practices in terms of software engineering standards like decoupling and being able to actually move something without having to interact with the whole world around you, where observability is not the default mode and where recoverability is not automated. And it's a huge crisis if something fails in production, where people are constantly interrupted by meetings that are scheduled at all times of the day without any chance of actually keeping focus on solving the business problem. And I'm not talking about internal team interruptions where you work together to form and find the best solutions. I'm talking about all the external things impacting your workday. We're still seeing platforms out there so far from being products that you can possibly get, and might even with a control or monopoly to push these platforms onto teams of people around them, with high degrees of dependencies hand carried into those teams without any sense of self-service or product operating model around your platform. And we're still seeing, in terms of speed, lots of big batches out there, huge commits, branches that live for days. So there's still, I think we've made quite an impact in this particular department, but it's just to say that we're just not there yet. And there's still so much we can do in terms of basic engineering excellence to move teams forward. And then you might say, yes, but there's a small note in Agile talking about engineering excellence, and therefore we should just do more Agile. I think it's fair to say that the conversation around this is right now not centered around Agile. It's different things in play. Another huge thing, and I think this might be the most underestimated impact, potential positive impact on organizations as we see them today. I know it's difficult, but I've seen it so many times that you want to improve, but you don't want to improve on the hard stuff. Because once you find out that you're really not aligned towards value delivery in your organizational structure, once you find out that you're essentially building functional or horizontal teams, business department structures, that is hard to change. Like typically people need new roles, people need new team structures, people need to organize their platforms around a different set of assumptions and values. And it's hard stuff. But the impact of changing this so that you start to see your organization from a customer service perspective rather than your internal delivery structures, the impact is just huge. And there is no single great way of going about it. Like for some, it will be organizing. Oh, something weird happened with text there. Sorry about that. For some, it will be the user segments. That is the ideal way to organize outside in. For others, it could be the customer touch points. It might even be geography, like typical markets you find yourself in. It might be the industries you find yourself in. But you need some way of starting your organization. You talk about organizational structure from the outside in rather than the inside out if you truly want to leverage, because otherwise I will guarantee you will end up in with high degrees of dependencies and not being able to move the financial needle without having to coordinate with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 teams around. So this is a really important conversation. And if I had one wish, it would be that instead of jumping directly into talking about teams adopting one method or framework or business unit doing the same or whatever, then start your talk about how do we organize so that we can actually face our services or our products or our customers in a way that is so it's outside in. For all of you out there working with AI, which has all the latest statistics, is something around 89% of all companies adopting AI in at one or another part of your company. Then we're seeing lots of problems right now. So the basic statistics are 39% lack trust in AI generated code. To a large degree, these are not governed. So you also see lots of security breaches out there right now, exposing sensitive data in touch points where they should never have found themselves. And first and foremost, 85% of all AI initiatives right now are not generating any return on investment. So it's not a small problem. And also it's not a sustainable problem overall globally. I just saw another statistic saying that right now, $500 billion are going into the development of AI and AI models, and the total global income is 12 billion. So 12 billion income, 500 billion in cost. That's not a sustainable way of going about it, but hopefully it's going to change at some point. The fact is, if you want to truly get value out of AI, there's one single thing you need to remember. So you can pretty much forget about everything else on this slide if you remember that if you're able to anchor AI to business value. So instead of talking about installing ChatGPT or launching a chat robot or just seeing any type of AI solution out there, then talk about what business problem are you trying to solve. I just went through 5 days of training and 2 days of training enablement in AI. And the one thing that company had would focus on was that if you don't do anything else, tie AI initiatives to business value and find out whether you are losing or winning that that game. That is the most important thing. After that, you can start to talk about how you embed it in your everyday workflows, how you govern, how you upskill, how you use it to move fast and learn fast. But you shouldn't have any of those discussions if you're not actually talking about how you can generate any value from this. The final pillar being leadership. It's equally frustrating, at least for me personally. And I've been working with organizational transformations and leadership for many years now, to see how few people still understand the very basics, even the difference between the part of leadership that's transformative, where we want leadership to drive the organization towards becoming a better place to work, and what we call modern leadership, which is the day-to-day leadership practices that we now know will ultimately generate better outcomes for you, your employees, and the organization. And again, I'll try to put it simply. So this could be a 2-day session on its own. But remember that if you find yourself in an organization where you're trying to change into something else, if you try to do that without anchoring it in your senior leadership, then you will face that glass wall. I can guarantee it. You can't transform an organization without having it anchored at the senior leadership level. From there, you can start to talk about cognitive leadership as a way of then growing your organizations. But bottom up doesn't work. Pure top down doesn't work either. It needs to be both. The other thing I would like to remember is that there are very simple things to remember about how we lead day to day. And it is, first of all, making sure that as leaders, you understand that you're here to sell the strategy. You're here to establish that direction and purpose driver. And if you fail on that, then shame on you for having any kind of attention on a team not performing, or an individual not performing, or whatever you might find your day-to-day work being filled with. If you cannot communicate clearly, why are we here? What problem are we trying to solve? Then you need to solve that first. And then I'll let you know some very few other principles that will create a huge impact. Then you ask people, you ask them without saying, I think you should do this, I think you should do that. What are you right now doing to try to move us in this direction? If they can't answer that because they don't know the direction, then you go back to number one, because you didn't frame the purpose driver or the direction ahead. And then when they answer that question, you don't take the ball and put it on your own path. You never take the ball away from them, but you might coach them. You might guide them. You might suggest ways of doing it differently. You might challenge them because you think they're working on the wrong assumptions, but they get to keep the ball. Because as soon as you take that ball away from them, it becomes your problem, and that does not scale. So you will find yourself trying to solve all the miniature problems of the organization, and you cannot do that as a leader, because the whole purpose of being a leader is trying to scale your impact. So micromanaging, you might like micromanagement, but it does not scale, and therefore you need to coach, guide, and challenge without taking over. Then you also need to request the best possible effort. So now there's going to be a decision vacuum between where we want to be as an organization and where we are. And you cannot fill that decision vacuum. That's the whole part of asking them for their tactical intent. And then you never punish mistakes. Because as soon as you start to punish mistakes, people are not going to dare move from where they are right now towards a strategy. And they're going to ask for permission all the time. And it's going to be impossible for you to get them to share their true intent, because all they'll be listening for is what you want to hear, so they can not make that mistake again. So to me, these 5 pillars are much, much, much more important than whether we talk about whether we're agile or not. So before we go into the discussion question part, I'd like you to leave you with one last small exercise in the chat, and you'll get just a minute to reflect on this. In the chat, I would like you to write strongest, and then either A, B, C, D, and E, weakest, A, B, C, D, and E, and invest, meaning this is where I think investing in this particular pillar will make the biggest difference for me or the organization I find myself in. So just take a minute and write those 3 strongest, weakest, invest, and then a letter following it. And put it in the chat. Good. So our minute is up. Only Torsten, I think. Yes. Now we go. Great. Yeah, a lot of you are choosing B. So it seems that engineering excellence is truly where we've made the biggest leaps in the last years. And we even have one choosing Sven chooses E as the strongest, which is quite interesting because I would think that for most organizations that is definitely their weakest point, which translates into a lot of the other problems. Okay, so yeah, I almost kept the timing, Morten, and we're only a bit over the first 30 minutes. So that was my presentation, and now it's I think it's questions and discussion from here on.
Thank you, Jesper. Really appreciate it. And well done with the timing. This is far from the worst we have experienced. So.
Good. So how does this work, Morten? Do I facilitate the questions, or do you? Or
well, we are not that many, so let's figure it out. But I actually normally get to ask the first question, and this time I'm a little bit struggling. What's the best to ask? But the one I would like to ask is about the difference between the work and the organization, and you already talked to it. So I think what you said is that you have to find a way to assign value to your AI investments. And I was just wondering, is there even like a level beyond that where you simply need to like generally prepare your organization to be able to carry those value investments? Can you just sort of work with the organization that you have, or are there things that you need to consider before you start building on the AI things?
Yeah, and I think there are several really interesting perspectives on that question. First of all, the bolting on, which is one of the other things they mentioned in the training I just went through, that doesn't work either. So you have to assume that if you want to succeed with AI, it's not something you do on top of your work. You start talking about how it's an actual integral part of everything you do. So it's a start first with AI kind of notion. But then at least their point was that you don't want to go into a transformation to support this from the first go. You want to start finding out, okay, let's try to solve real problems with AI. And it could be very different. It could be, okay, so right now it seems that we have really bad quality because our automated test suite is years old, outdated, or not there at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so let's find a way not just to apply AI blindly, but now we know that it's a quality problem that we're trying to solve. And now we can much more targeted talk about how we can possibly use AI to solve this problem. Or right now we have 700 supporters, and they're all working overtime just to deal with the problems of support coming in. we can do that from two perspectives. Now we just talked about quality, so maybe we're getting lots of support requests because our quality is bad, or we simply want to automate some of these supports with chat agents or whatever. But now at least we know that there's a business problem behind this assumption. And now we can start to work, instead of trying to solve everything about this, now we can start to talk about, instead of just launching a chat robot, hoping that we will get any type of value out, what is our primary problem in terms of support that we would like to start to automate? And where can we get help AI in terms of training a rack or whatever? And then it becomes much, much more targeted and much, much more specific rather than just saying, and I actually saw that in a strategy document the other day. It on the actual company strategy, it said launch a chat robot. It didn't say where, it didn't say why, it didn't say how we're hoping to measure the impact of law. It just said, okay, let's do anywhere behind, let's do anything with Agile, with AI, and then we'll probably be a success.
It's a smart goal. It's easy to measure.
Yeah,
So
and you're
what I
probably
hear you,
likely to succeed with that goal and fail on the ROI like everybody else does.
so what I hear you recommend is like a low hanging value first type of approach to how to go about this.
Yeah, and then don't start by doing an organizational transformation to support it, because that will probably be the very thing you don't want to do, because that is then AI becomes the goal in and of itself rather than trying to target some kind of business problem to solve.
Thank you. Let's open it up. And please just ask your question. If it gets too turbulent, you can raise your hand and we go one by one. Go ahead, Lyson.
I was wondering when we okay. Just thank you. By the way, Jesper, very interesting viewpoints. What you just said, could you elaborate on this, on that? Don't start to reorganize, or however did you actually said it. Can you go in a little more detail about what not to do?
Specifically on the AI problem?
You just said, I think it was your last sentence, something about don't start to reorganize your organization. First of all, start somewhere else. Can you elaborate
so this
on
was
that?
very particular to the question around, okay, so now you find yourself on the late adoption curve in AI, and all the companies around you are moving really fast. And then let's do an AI transformation. And if you go down that road saying now we're going to reorganize, not to drive business value, but to drive AI adoption, that is not the way to go about it. So
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that clarified. Super.
Anyone else?
did I put you all to sleep? Then I'm sorry.
I also have another question, but I would like to hear from somebody else first.
I should have planted a question with Martin before we started, then at least it wouldn't seem so.
Yeah, I wrote this down. You said, and I totally think I agree with basically everything you say, but you said micromanagement does not scale. Micromanagement does not scale. And I was just thinking, yeah. Can you, just say a few more words about that?
Yeah, so it's actually been kind of a marketing exercise from me personally from like years and years ago, because sometimes you would get into discussion whether micromanagement is good or bad, and some would tell me, yeah, but then we had this problem, and I went in there, and then I fixed that problem, and then I went in the other place and I fixed that problem too, and I'm the cleverest guy and I can do this, and then say, yeah, but that's not what we hired you to do, because you can only do that in one place. And if we want this organization to scale, then we can't scale you. Because as far as I know, we don't have these machines to clone you in 600 different places of this organization. And there is no possible way that you could keep up with details at this level as a leader. So instead of talking about being right or wrong, I've been trying to position it, you want to scale, and the only way you can scale is that you try to use modern leadership practices, because those are going to scale, because there you can coach and guide, and they can share their intent, and you get to give your input. But the only thing you cannot do is you cannot then go and tell them how to use that input. But your input will scale to a much larger degree than you trying to firefight on the behalf of all those intelligent people. And also you will get very little insight, again, from the scaling perspective, in terms of where you need to grow your organization. So it might be that right now, yes, you have a feeling deep down in your body that these people are not fit for purpose. Then that's a problem. It's a problem that you need to solve so that you can scale again. And the way you find out whether they are fit, that is by asking them, what are you going to do to get to where we want to go? And if you start telling them, I want you to follow this path to get to where you want, you're never going to get the insight whether they know or they don't, or whether they're missing context, or whether they're too far removed from customers, or whether they're technically horrible at what they're supposed, because you haven't heard their suggestion. And all they're going to be listening for is, again, how would you do it? And that, again, doesn't scale. So the scaling has actually been kind of a marketing for me personally to market modern leadership practices instead of going into the discussion of whether one is better than the other.
I'm glad I asked then. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry for the long answer.
Yeah, it's actually not a question. It's just, yes, to underscore, maybe look at what Jesper said from another angle. Is I recently got the question, actually, how do you create a high performance team? And if you're a manager of teams, it's the other side of the same coin would be that your top individual contributors must be force multipliers. They must teach others how to do the same, or at least improve them. Otherwise, there's a quite severe limit to what the outcomes you can achieve, the impact you can have. Yeah, so I would say it's the same for the whole organization. It's not just you who need to stop micromanage if you want to maximize the impact. So yeah, there's another hand raised. So I'm my namesake.
Yeah, hi, and thanks for a great presentation. You were mentioning in your presentation that in many ways we haven't come such a long way in 20 years. And I totally agree with that. Many of the things we are still struggling with, we thought would be gone. Do we have given any thought through why we are here? Why haven't we achieved that? Where did we fail as Agilists?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so at least to my personal knowledge, we've simply underestimated the entry barriers for disruption in general, and anything from we're just looking at the financial sector, like they should be celebrating all those EU regulations when every single day they go home from work, right? Because that is what's keeping them from being disrupted. But also, if you're doing software for lawyers or selling farm equipment or whatever, it's such niche, and you have such a big level of depth in terms of domain knowledge that maybe people don't even know your segment exists, and you're making tons of money year over year over year by just doing work in that niche. And work is simply not fast enough around you, so it matters whether you're doing that with maybe more old style ways of doing it, or you're doing what you perceive to be agile. And the third point being, few people or few organizations have truly at scale leveraged the modern product development practices. So there's simply not been enough of pressure on that particular agenda. And we were just looking at anything from insurance to finance to energy. Now you could look everywhere. You would see pockets of true ability to actually sense, decide, ship, validate, and iterate, and just something as simple as separating your discovery workflows from your delivery workflows. Like they're few and far between that it's not really a factor in the business world. But I think that is going to change now. So I think for the first time in history, we will actually see that pressure from the outside, truly starting to disrupt some of those sectors, because literally you can, if you have a team suddenly of 3 AI architects, do the work of 8 teams of 8 people in a faster amount of time. So I think for the first time, those predictions might actually start to come true, and it's not just slideware anymore.
I'm looking forward. I'm in finance.
Yeah.
But just don't look in finance and energy, because they're probably not going to be disrupted anytime soon. Sorry.
And this is guessing, right? So I'm going to do the same thing and pose another hypothesis around this, and it's because Denmark isn't really a tech nation as such. We don't really have the OpenAIs or the Microsofts or the Googles or the Metas or the Silicon Valley and so on and so forth. So in Stockholm, there might be a spillover from Klarna and Spotify. At least that's what I've been told. But so my take is that one reason, part of the equation, is that the CEOs of Maersk and Danske Bank and what have you, they don't really visit the same sauna and play on the same golf club as CEOs of huge tech companies, because there's simply no crossovers in a way we see some other places. And I think that plays a part. So they not as receptive. So we here might come from software. I know I do. I know Jesper does. I know Morten does, and so on and so forth. So I think most of us underestimated that we came from a place and we picked up, books and conferences and what have you from the tech industry. But that's not how most companies, big enterprises in Denmark are run. I think AI will speed things up, but I think that's a part of the equation. These things aren't really taught at CBS.
True.
Maybe just something to add there. Hi. Also wondering how many board members are actually talking about implementing stuff in an agile way. I think it's close to 0 when you take a look at. It's also an assumption, but at least that's what I also experience. It's not up there. It's always coming from the bottom to the top. Sometimes it's reaches higher tops, otherwise it doesn't. And then of course you get into failure, or at least it's not going as you wanted. But that's my perspective as well on why it's not always a success, and why we are not further than we are today. So would be nice if it was involved in some board training or something like that. And more seen as a business strategy than a software development strategy, as it is in many companies.
And picking up on that has and is probably still the main problem around the whole concept of agile, that it's still seen as a software thing. And if you cannot move that into a business thing and a leadership thing, then my prediction is you're never going to have much of an impact. It's going to be local, it's going to be pockets of success, and it's never going to be at scale. And that is maybe you pointed out much better than I could, the main problem around agile still in 2025, that it's still a team level tech problem. It's not a business problem.
I have a question for Martin, because here in Denmark, what we're seeing is kind of a pushback where Scrum Masters are being laid off, and many companies are not too enthusiastic about Agile anymore. Do you see the same trend in Sweden?
I honestly don't know, because I've been working in Denmark for 18 years.
Okay.
So wrong person to ask.
So does anybody here have an idea? Is it like a worldwide trend that the Scrum Master is being discredited?
Yeah, it is.
I'm from Sweden too, so I could fill in with that. I've worked at Volvo Cars 21 to 23. I think all my colleagues are out of the business right now. So they shipped out. They really threw out everybody talking about Agile because they say it's failed, so to speak. So and it happens everywhere. There are so many people looking for the same jobs. Maybe a Scrum Masters or now it's project manager it should be called, but if you look into it, it's almost the same or a combination between Scrum Master and product owner. So it's a huge problem for the Agile world in Sweden.
So same picture.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, it's worldwide, I think actually. So.
Stefan, can you elaborate a little bit on the problem itself? What is a problem right there when you say, okay, this is a huge problem?
They don't trust management doesn't trust Agile doing the real changes that they wanted, and
Okay.
they're just thinking that the ceremonies and rituals are taking away time from production.
Yeah.
Yeah, the problems we always have had to struggle with. Yeah. So, and unfortunately, they don't listen to us right now either. So.
Go ahead, Leite.
Mostly with the larger companies. That's where the largest problem is. Yes. Yeah.
I might be, I don't know, I don't see the fact that we're moving away from a Scrum Master on every team means that we're less agile, to be honest. Like you told or said it yourself, I think Scrum Master can be close also to another role. And we also heard it, I think, many times before, is the other way around, where people say, okay, anyone on the team can be Scrum Master at some point. Some are better than others, but it's important, of course, that you agree on who's going to be the Scrum Master for a period, maybe, and you can rotate that role as well if you want it. So, me myself, I'm in kind of, I am the Scrum Master, but I am also the software team lead, as you call it. So I'm, team leader. So I do both parts. And to be honest, I don't know. I don't feel myself anymore the Scrum Master that I was 4 years ago, for example. I have a lot more focus on people management, coaching, and so on, than being a Scrum Master that is actually trying to find the small gaps and actually does micromanagement. Because as soon as you start to be a Scrum Master, you do have to do some micromanagement, as I see it. Not saying that you have to tell the people what they need to do, but you need to find things and see things that other people don't see it. So.
Thank you.
Yes, and I think the problem is too that I'm not interested in how I'm interested in not what they're doing. I'm interested in how they do it. So I'm more interested in interaction between people, that things happen, that they talk to each other and communicate in a good way. And that's not, I don't think it's possible to take over for a team, part of the team. Somebody being a part of a team. I think it's they have other directions that they have been working with development mostly. So it's quite another job and other ways of thinking. So yeah.
Good conversation. Let's round it off.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just real quick, if I may go back to one of your first slides, Jesper. It said something about problems, etc., etc., and it said AI is also ungoverned. AI is also ungoverned. So I was thinking if you can say something, or if you have an idea of how can or should we govern AI, meaning should we govern AI, or maybe should we not? Any thoughts of that?
Yeah, is it me you're asking or Jenna?
Yeah, because it was your slide.
Okay. Yeah. So at least it seems right now for companies in general that the ungoverned AI is a huge part of the ROI problem with AI. Because a lot of these POCs, they never make it into production scale because you forget all of the assumptions you would have for any other type of solution or software you're developing, that you would never just give that software access to your entire portfolio of customer data and just thinking that's going to work out fine, or train it without looking very specifically into what could be the sensitivity of that data before you start exposing it to a potential customer or end user. Or just the fact that right now you have solutions out there where you have HR solutions where you would ask them, do I have 5 weeks of vacation left? And people literally trust the answer, even though that agent has 0% chance for knowing whether you as a person asking that particular question, it doesn't even have access to that data. And they're using that. Yeah, I booked 5 weeks of holiday going to Costa Rica because the AI agent told me I had 5 days, 5 weeks of vacation left. So there are so many problems in terms of how you govern AI right now that is impacting the ROI of AI. And before you are facing a true business result of your AI, it's going to be different. It's going to be very, very difficult to scale. So it's actually like statistically, it's a huge problem that you're not governing AI in terms of getting positive results from AI.
How can 5 weeks in the Caribbean be a problem?
If you book that vacation just to have somebody that actually could access real HR data telling you that you only have 4 days left.
That's a good example. Yes, well, thank you so much. I have one last question for you, and then we will round off. What are the things which are inspiring you at the moment? Where are you looking for inspiration?
On many places. So obviously, as you probably noted from some of the smaller details on my slide, the whole notion of being more of a value-driven organization has been huge for me for many years. And finally, Marty Kagan and company chose to write some books a few years ago that actually support that notion. I didn't like Inspired that much, but I really enjoyed Empowered, and especially Transformed, because it talks into the principles I've been trying to push out there for many years. So at least I 80% agree with those, but it's so much easier now that you have a book you can bring and you can tell people to read that book instead of it being something I have a strong opinion on. But the whole sense of aligning organizations towards a business customer service purpose, using that to define your organizational structures, seeing how much you can then enable teams and leaders to drive business results rather than just weird mechanics way low in the organization, and then having finally the ability, when you've got that set up, for people to truly separate also their discovery and delivery processes so they can learn much faster, and then they can also deliver results that are at least closer to the impact they were hoping for. That is what I've always wanted, and I just observing the true results of that is something I'm really passionate about, and now seeing materialize to a lot larger degree than we could before.
Thank you. And just before we let you go, anything we can do for you?
That is a good question. I wish you'd asked me that half an hour ago. Then I had some time to think about it.
We have time.
Yeah, obviously you can help me expand my work so that I get much more chances to do this for organizations at scale, both in terms of AI and modern product development.
You are always welcome to come here and talk about your work.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks so much.
So everyone have a nice evening, and hope to see you all soon again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Limora.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.